Welcome to the Dance NYC 2021 Symposium. We will be with you shortly. Today's schedule. 10:15 a.m. will be our welcome and wake up. 10:30 a.m. we begin our morning sessions. 12 p.m. is your lunch hour. 1 p.m. we begin our afternoon sessions. At 2:30 p.m. we will have a short break, and at 2:45 p.m. is the daily debrief session. Move your bodies at 3:45 with the dance break. At 4:15 p.m. our virtual expo showcases begin. And 5:30 p.m. with our keynote conversation. Accessibility. ASL interpretation and live captioning will be provided for today's session. A stream-to-text link will be posted in the chat for access to the live transcriptions. Stay connected with us by posting your takeaways on social media using the hashtags DanceSymp, DanceNYC 2021, DanceSymp2021, at Instagram @dance.nyc, at Twitter @dance.nyc, and at Facebook @dance/NYC. Community guidelines. Based on Dance NYC's values of justice, equity, and inclusion, we agree to share our opinions, challenge perspectives, and engage or debate respectfully, and acknowledge and course correct if harm is caused. Honor everyone's personhood and humanity. Not tolerate speech that is disparaging, abusive, violent, or that is intended to defame someone's character publicly. Some features not to miss. Build your agenda of sessions, connect with other attendees, join community conversations, and visit the exhibitor hall. Don't forget to check out the 2021 Symposium digital program book with curated thematic guides. We are happy to be in community with you. Thanks for joining.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica Gaines, Communications Manager at Dance NYC. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I identify as a non-disabled Black woman. I am wearing a black t-shirt that declares I'm a New Yorker for dance, with black and white striped accents, turquoise necklace with dark crinkly hair. My background is textured wood. I have been living in the Muncie Lenape territory for 5 years now. And for those just joining us, please visit our land acknowledgement on the agenda page and lift up the Indigenous lands you are currently on in our chat. So first, thank you for joining us for this completely digital 2021 symposium held on the HOVA platform. And as we are at the mercy of technology, we want to remind you that we may have delays, sound issues, and changing circumstances that may occur during our time together. We invite you to extend us each other grace and patience. Second, we have an ASL interpreter from LC Interpreting Services and closed captioning services provided by the Viscardi Center, who will be available throughout the session. We'll also post speaker information in the description below and under the speakers module on the left side of your HOVA web app or on the menu of your HOVA mobile app. This information is also available on our website. Third, feel free to post questions or comments you want to share with the community in the chat section on the right of this event room. Dance NYC moderators will be interacting with you in the chat audience, and there will not be dedicated time today for Q&A during this discussion, but there will be a session follow-up chat room in the community section of HOVA where the moderator and a few of the guests will be available for direct questions. Lastly, we hope you will help amplify these conversations, repost, tag, and share your takeaways on Twitter at DanceNYC, Instagram at dance.nyc, and Facebook's DanceNYC account using the hashtag DanceSim. And now we enter the world of streets, dance halls, and living rooms, social dance in form, function, and practice. As physical distancing is one of the imposing paradigms of our pandemic experience, and dancing indoor studios is not a given, we are reminded that many dance forms birthed in communities of color have been solving issues of interaction in what we are now considering alternative space. In this session, we focus on social dances, the roles they have played in key moments in history, including the one we are experiencing currently, and the lessons to be learned from these practices today. We'll also discuss the barriers of these forms and their practitioners, the barriers that these forms and their practitioners have faced in the dance world, thinking about recognition, resources, camaraderie, and the things like that that are often offered. And also thinking about how race and ethnicity affect this experience. So I'd love to welcome your moderator for today's discussion, Principal of Rodney Eric Lopez Enterprises, Rodney Lopez. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Jessica, for that kind introduction. Once again, my name is Rodney Eric Lopez. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I am currently on the land of the Wampanoag. I am a non-disabled, brown-skinned Black man of Puerto Rican heritage. I'm wearing a pink shirt with a purple blazer. I'm bald, and my virtual background is a Bronx-based dance studio. Welcome to all of you who are present for what promises to be an important and engaging discussion. Brenda Dixon Gottschalk, the noted dance scholar, in her essay, Crossroads, Continuities, and Contradictions, writes about several key aspects of Africanist performance practices. I want to zero in on two. The idea of social dance as continuity between the human and spirit worlds, and that of multiple points of focus. With regard to the former, she writes, many of us may recall having entered a near trance-like state in some social dance situation in our own realm of experience. And this is to be expected. The body movements, steps, postures, and motifs are the same in social and secular forms of Africanist dance. It is only through nomo, the power of the word, that one type of experience is called ritual and another social. With regard to multiple points of focus, Gottschalk continues, where the circle rules, there is an abundance of energy, vitality, flexibility, and potential. There is always the possibility that the person who is an onlooker may be drawn into the action and become a performer. In addition, since there is no proscenium stage separating audience from performers, spectators may choose where to focus their attention, and performers may choose where to locate themselves while performing. This is not to be mistaken for chaos. Instead, this is a democracy of structure. Lastly, she writes, one must have a sequestered space in order to let it all hang out, be it the voodoo temple, a communal courtyard, or a friend's living room on a Saturday night. When the deities mount the bodies of the faithful, there are arms and bodies of the community to catch them if they fall. It is these and many other important attributes of social dance that we wish to lift up and examine in this panel discussion. As someone who has not only made his career as a practitioner of social dance, most prominently salsa, I can deeply identify with Gottschalk's deep understanding of it. I have lost myself in an extended montuno section of a song and literally felt my body taken over by the music and paid for it with sore muscles the next day. I've ignored the physical boundaries of pillars, walls and stairs, and found ways to weave among bodies and furniture when I'm really moved by a particular tune. Most importantly, I felt the safety of a community that's in it with me. Hundreds of bodies moving, not in unison, but in unity of spirit, shaking, shimmying, and sweating in a moment that is both fleeting and enduring, grounded and transcendent. The dance itself is an act of resistance. As Anita Amirazvani writes, dancers resist entertainment incorporated with the one thing that hasn't suffered a corporate takeover, their bodies. When you're dancing, you can't buy anything and you can't be deluged with ads. Our rock star panelists are social dance artists, teachers, and scholars who will help us center this vital art form and offer thoughts on both their definitions of social dance, as well as speak more specifically into the experience of social dance in the pandemic moment. We acknowledge that social dance is expansive. It includes both partnered and non-partnered forms and is found in every culture in the world. And so we're excited to dig into this conversation. Streets, dance halls, and living rooms, social dance in form, function, and practice. And I'm thrilled to invite Nicole Makatzis, Michael Manswell, and Jyoti Singh to introduce themselves to you. So, Nicole?
My name is Nicole Makatzis, and I'm very happy to be here. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am currently on the land of the Lenape and Canarsie people, and I identify as a non-disabled white woman of Greek heritage. I will tell you about what I'm wearing. I'm wearing a leopard skin patterned sweatshirt, and I have highlighted blonde, gray, and brown hair that's parted on the side. And shall I tell you a little bit about myself before we?
Absolutely. We'd love to hear a little bit about your background, Nicole.
So I consider myself a public folklorist or cultural worker, and I've worked primarily on dance, and especially with Arab American and Arab communities here in Brooklyn over the years. And primarily what I do through, right now I'm working independently and consulting, is provide field work and assistance with public programming, public cultural programming. So I consider myself more as a partner and someone who can help cultural communities identify what is important to them in terms of sustaining their culture, and provide opportunities for public presentation if that's what they think they need. I've also been a dancer for many years. I specialized in Egyptian solo female dance known as Raqs Sharqi. I'm not Egyptian, or as known as what's kind of a misnomer, belly dance here in the US. So that's a little bit about myself, and I'm happy to give you more background as we go along.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Michael, please introduce yourself to our audience.
My name is Michael Manswell. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am currently on the land of the Lenape and Canarsie people. I am a non-disabled African man of Caribbean heritage. I am bald, wearing a red shirt, and my background is a table setting with white walls. I am the artistic director of Something Positive, a Caribbean American African performing and educational organization based here in Brooklyn. We were founded by Cheryl Byron, who is the acknowledged mother of Rapso, a form of speech, poetry, song that she originated in Trinidad and Tobago, where I am from. And at this point, we are on, as we are all, so many of us, we are in a space where we are not performing as much, but we are constantly on the move and not just searching for performance opportunities, but also searching for opportunities to educate and inform and entertain all at the same time, audiences of many colors, creeds, whatever you want to call yourselves. We are here and we're doing it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michael. And Jyoti, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jyoti Singh. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a non-disabled brown-skinned woman of South Asian descent. I am on unceded Ramaytush Ohlone land, also known as San Francisco. And I am wearing a mustard colored sweater. I have long black curly hair, wearing colorful beaded earrings. And I'm in front of a rippled white wall that's in the shape of a sound wave. And I want to say I'm incredibly honored and humbled to be on this panel with such a stellar group of artists, and want to thank Dance NYC for inviting me. I am the artistic director of Dunia Dance and Drum Company. We're based in San Francisco. We do Bhangra from South Asia, from India and Pakistan, and also West African dance and drum. My partner, Bongo Sidi Bey, is our co-director as well. He is a percussionist from Guinea. And we do a lot of performances. We're also educators. We are a performing group as well. And we use our dance forms and our music forms to tell stories of our communities. For example, we have a full-length performance on the Punjabi Mexican communities of California. And so we are both in the social spaces of weddings and parties, and in the streets, the living rooms, and also we really use our forms to tell our stories that are not told, and to really lift up our communities. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, Jyoti, and thank you everyone for those introductions and for introducing yourselves to our audience. I'm going to encourage any of you who are watching this in our audience to please read the bios of these incredible artists and human beings to find out more about their work and to find out more about how you can follow them and follow the work that they do. So, so really, I would just like to kick this off with our first question. The first thing for us to consider, Nicole, this first question is going to come your way first. And the question is, let's start with a definitional question. Let's start framing this discussion for people who may be new to the area of social dance. And that is, what is your definition or understanding of social dance? And so, Nicole, why don't you get this party started?
Okay, I will. So I would veer away from a definition just and say what my understanding is. And there are certain characteristics when we're looking at what I would call traditional dance. And we could apply that to social dance. So one of them is how it's learned. So one characteristic of social dance, I would say, that it's learned in practice and in community, and it could be intergenerational. So you might see, for example, if you look at Levantine Depka, which is a dance form that I worked with a lot from Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, and that area, and in Brooklyn, of course, people learn it at weddings. Like the little kids are going to be holding hands with the older generations and learning it on the spot. Another way to look at it is if it's participatory. So is it something that the boundary between the audience and the dancer is blurred? People can cross back and forth over that, where it might, if you might call concert dance, has the barrier between the audience, the spectator, and the dancer. So that boundary would be much more fluid. And of course, is defined within community who the skilled dancers are. They're the ones that might take the lead, and the beginners, the ones that are just getting into the practice of it, are going to be sitting and watching more. So those are two main things that I look at. You could also look at where it's practiced, and of course the society involved. If it's a social dance, then I would consider that it has to be social. I mean, it is hard to do it by yourself. So I think that would be one of the main characteristics of it. So I'll just leave it at that, and then I'm happy to contribute more as we go on.
Thank you, Nicole. So what I'm hearing you say is certainly key attributes of social dance are an intergenerational aspect, location, and community context certainly matter in the understanding of social dance. I'm gonna pass it over to Michael next and ask Michael, what is your understanding or your definition of what social dance is?
I think that to answer that, you need a little bit of history from me to know where I'm coming from. I originally trained in Trinidad and Tobago in what was referred to as ballroom dancing. So in addition to the techniques of Horton and Graham and ballet and all those things, the company I belonged to also did tango and samba, ballroom samba, paso doble, cha-cha, rumba, etc., etc. And for me, that defined social dancing. However, as I matured and I became more experienced, I realized that social dancing is exactly that. It's almost self-defining. It's social, it's dance in community. And without that communal give, take, support matrix happening, then it's not social. So for me, social dancing largely in so many areas defines what we refer to loosely as the folkloric. And you find in so many of the folkloric strains or motifs in dance, the whole idea of that social dancing, the idea of the intergenerational, that these dances are used, formed, developed to support community and community involvement. And again, just like Nicole said, that liminal space where performer, spectator is undefined. And you can take that wherever you want it to be. And so your level of investment in the occasion or in the performance also varies. Are you a drummer? Are you a dancer? Are you a dancer and a drummer? Are you a guitarist that also dances? Can you get up there and just do it and then sit down, play, or applaud or encourage? And so, you know, it's really quite hard to define, but easy to exemplify.
Thank you. That's a wonderful response. Thank you so much, Michael. Jyoti, how would you answer the same question?
So, you know, I don't think I've really used this term social dance to apply to the kinds of dances I do. And I think both the other panelists have brought up the terms traditional and folkloric. And so those are terms that are more tied to the kind of dances that I do. So, you know, in thinking about this panel, I was wondering, you know, how does social dance relate to traditional and folkloric? And I think, you know, y'all can clarify for me, but, you know, social seems to be that large umbrella that, you know, a lot of these art forms can fall under. And, you know, not to reiterate everything everyone said, which I agree with, the circle is a big part of it. You know, I love so much of the introduction you did, Rodney, talking about how just a word separates ritual from social. You know, it's just that defining. And I would say the dance forms I practice are related to a rite of passage or a life event. So in addition to it being a community experience, there is an occasion, there's some, community celebration, or for Bhangra, it's a harvest dance. It's tied to a very important part of people's lives, and including their natural environment. So I think that's a big part of the social dances that I practice, are those stories where they're, why are we doing them, and like you mentioned, this kind of link between the spiritual and the human world, and how those are tied together, very much about being part of our natural world, and how we're thankful for the blessings that we're getting from our natural world. So we celebrate that, or we want something more, so we're asking for that. So in addition to what people have said, I think that for me, that's a big part of the function and the existence of social dance.
Thank you, Jyoti. So I think the three of you have just done an incredible job framing this for our audience. There is an aspect. First of all, there's just vocabulary, right? Like I appreciate Jyoti's response that says, well, maybe I don't think of this as social dance, but perhaps traditional dance or folkloric dance nests inside a larger definitional umbrella of social dance, or it could go the other way. And as has been said, there are traditions involved, there are communities involved, there is context involved, there are rites of passage, there are elements of environmental respect and acknowledgement. And so I think you've all teased out really important aspects of what social dance is. So thank you for that. And thank you for getting us started in this way. I'd like to ask each of you a personal question. And I'd like you to sort of go into your memory banks a little bit. I will start so that I can give you a few seconds to think about something, so that you're a little bit off the hook. But the next question I'd like to ask you is to ground it in something personal, which is, what is your first memory of dance? Where were you? And how did it make you feel, right? What is your first memory of dance? Where were you? And how did it make you feel? My first memories of dance are, growing up with my parents in the Bronx. And my mom loved all kinds of music. She was a particular fan of disco. She loved disco music. She loved the hustle, and she loved all that stuff that was on the radio at that time. And I have very early memories of like my mom in the living room with plastic covered furniture doing like our fake version of the hustle. And I've got one picture of me as a very little kid. I couldn't have been more than 4 years old, and I'm wearing this miniaturized suit for my body, and they captured me in one of those classic John Travolta poses in my living room, and so it brings back wonderful memories of a music-filled home, and one where dance certainly was present, and certainly there was salsa, and there was all these other wonderful kinds of Latin music as well as American music. But that's my earliest memory of dance. And so I want to open this up to the three of you. What's your first memory of dance, and how did it make you feel? So I'm gonna now start with Michael.
That was absolutely beautiful. It's so, and I have never really thought of that. And my first memory would be on my grandmother's steps. And my aunt loved Otis Redding and all those, and we're living in Trinidad. And she would play the same thing over and over, until one day she played Chubby Checker. Let's do the twist. And I started moving. And of course, Trinidadians are known for the looseness in the pelvis, you know, that whole African thing, whining and carrying on. And I just thought it was perfect. It was lovely. And I twisted and twisted and twisted. And I realized, even in that, what I would call infantile experience, joy.
Mm.
The idea that one can be transformed by hearing music, lyrics used in conjunction or in concert with each other that spurts the body into action. And that is just a 2020, like old scholar kind of looking back, Sankofa-ish movement now that I'm thinking about it, that you made me like regurgitate. That's the feeling, you know, that music can spark movement along with the lyrics, because apparently from my adoring grandparent, my adoring grandmother and auntie, I was the perfect dancer. So I must have done a great twist. There was no video at the time. Sorry.
Well, we can imagine, and thank you for that. And the twist is absolutely irresistible, for sure. No one can resist the twist. Jyoti, how about you? What's your earliest memory of dance, and how did it make you feel?
My earliest memory of dance, I grew up right outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and my parents would have these huge parties for New Year's or July 4th. And so there would be a whole bunch of Punjabis in our house from all over the East Coast. People would drive from Michigan, from New York, from DC, from South Carolina. And we would have these big community parties. And my sisters used to, you know, we would do some kind of performance a lot of times, and they're older, of course. And they would, you know, make me dance. You know, I didn't know what I was doing. And they were like, Jyoti, get up there and dance. And I would fall down and they'd be like, get up. You can't stop dancing yet. And so they like to credit themselves for my dancing career now. But I remember, you know, dance as being such a, like you mentioned in the beginning, sort of this safety of community, and being a South Asian immigrant community in the South in the 80s was not always a very safe experience. And so I think, you know, so much of these parties were to reconnect, to, you know, carry on some of the traditions to the next generation, and really to feel that safety. And that my dad is a musician. And so, you know, he would perform, and, you know, some of my uncles and aunties, and it was very much just a release in a way, and a reconnection with, you know, something much larger and bigger, and something that had been severed through this process of immigration to the United States.
Well, thank you, Jyoti. And so I've already heard from these two responses. There's grandma on the stoop, and then there's just being surrounded by community from all parts of the Northeast. But there's a safety in family and an expectation that you're just going to get up there. You fall down, you get up, and you keep dancing. It's just one of the expectations of family. Nicole, how about you?
Well, I was kind of taken aback by the question, because I thought, well, what's my own tradition? Because ethnically, my father was born in Brooklyn, but he was Greek. My grandparents are from Northern Greece. But I never grew up with that dance tradition. And my mother was she is a ballet teacher. So I remember Suki Shore. She would be doing her bar in the morning on the mantle, like holding onto the mantle, the fake fireplace, and playing some piano track, the bar piano track. And I mean, I remember wanting to join her and just trying to do it with her. And I think social dance to me was kind of this feeling of wanting to belong to something bigger than myself, but feeling like an outsider. And even if it was ballet bar, like that was a social activity that I could have participated in with my mother, but she kind of was like, let me just get my bar in. And then I remember going to Greek weddings when I was young, Greek American weddings there were these huge gatherings or huge birthday parties where there is like freestyle dance, but there's a line dance, which is so important. And then I'm sure I struggled with the rhythms and like trying to get into the line, but I do remember when I got it, I was like, I'm Greek American. I can't speak the language. I don't know how to cook, but I can, do this particular dance. And then later when I was a young adult, I joined Greek folkloric troops just so that I could feel more Greek American. But yeah, it was a sense of belonging, and probably it was always that way. I would go to clubs like as a young adult or a 18-year-old in New York City to hip hop club, or there'd be dance hall, and I'd be like, wow, I have to just fit in and get in where I fit in. So my friend and I would go home and practice, or we'd take a class if we could with Maria Torres was teaching hip hop classes back then in the early 90s. So because I wanted to feel like I belonged to something, whatever that social situation was. I wanted to feel like I belonged and I wasn't an outsider. So that was and I did achieve that, in certain settings, especially in the Greek American setting to a certain degree. But that's kind of what it represented to me.
Nicole, thank you for that. And thank you for that story, because in your experience, it was an affirmation of culture. It sounded like it meant a great deal to you to connect with your Greek heritage through dance, and how many of us really long for that kind of experience. And dance gives us direct access because it's embodied. It's not in a book. It's not in a college level course. It's direct access through your body to a long history and a long historical culture. So thank you for sharing that. I'd like to bring the conversation now to kind of more squarely into what we're here to talk about today. And so the first question I'd like to ask, this next one is going to go to Jyoti first. So I'm going to cue you up to kick us off on this question. And the next question is, in what ways has social dance adapted to the pandemic moment? Now, we are used to being in dance studios. We are used to being in public spaces, whether it's in New York City, the South Street Seaport, or Lincoln Center for Midsummer Night's Swing. I'm sure in San Francisco, there are public spaces that are like that as well. And we've lost that this year. We've lost that in a big way as a result of COVID. So in your areas of the world and in your areas of expertise, what ways has social dance adapted to the pandemic moment? So Jyoti, why don't you kick us off?
Well, I think it's really shown us how adaptable social dance can be. San Francisco, I think, has had the strictest, lockdown in the country, or one of the strictest. So we've really been under stay-at-home orders for almost all of the pandemic. We moved things online quickly. Let's teach classes online. We've done rehearsals online. There have been dance parties online. But it really feels like something is missing, and I know everybody feels that. And I think it's also shown a lot of people who maybe dance isn't like the center of their lives like it is for us, just how important, and what a role it plays in their lives. I've seen through, my dance company, as we've done rehearsals, I was like a little bit hesitant to do that because it is such a community experience, but people need it. Even though it's online, they're like, I need to see it. I need to feel connected. And we've taken time to kind of slow down. So I think, that's part of it, to have conversations, to understand each other better, to talk, to get to know each other's backgrounds. And so I think in a way, when we can go back to dancing in person, like our foundation will actually be a little bit stronger, because we've taken that time to really to go deep. I also have been teaching a little bit outside. So we've been able to do that with like limited numbers. And I can just, when I feel people show up in that outside space, everybody exhale. Like, there's a person to dance with, there are other people in my community. So, I think we've adapted really well under the circumstances. And I think that we've also gained just incredibly important perspective on what is important to us, and what role does our dance and our community play in our lives, and how much dance is the the thing that brings that community together.
That's great. So you've rooted some things in conversation and connection that can then lay a groundwork for greater relationship to the art form on the other side of the pandemic. That's wonderful. Nicole, how would you answer that question? How has social dance adapted to this moment of the pandemic?
I didn't really feel like I could answer that question adequately. So I called up a few of my dance partners that I've worked with over the years. And I was just speaking to Richie Breakeasy Santiago yesterday, because I was like, what's going on with dance? I mean, I'm stuck at home with my two kids, and I'll try to take an online dance class of a social dance form. So some dances, like Jyoti said, have adopted online, but I think some have really suffered. And but what Richie said was, he was meeting in McCarran Park. He was teaching like Brooklyn rock and b-boy styles, and that was going strong until it got to be freezing temperatures here in New York. And then he was able to transfer that to a community center as well. So that group of people it's a free class, and they can still participate in face-to-face social dancing. But he's changed his technique a bit to practice on moves where people can stay in their own space and be safe. So that's changed how he teaches the dance. And then he also told me that he's teaching in one studio where they've transferred to Zoom. So that's a paid class. So those people are able to pay for the Zoom connection and what have you. Because I was wondering, does everyone have access to Zoom? Like, what does that mean in terms of accessibility? I don't really know if there have been studies done on what percentage of the dance population has a Wi-Fi connection or has access to learning online. So, I think he's a good example of someone who's adapted, and I think he's going to keep going in that way. And I do know other dance companies that have just stopped. They just couldn't make the switch to online dancing, and especially social dancers that are also professionals at social life events like weddings and birthdays. Those events have been canceled or restricted in a way that their companies have kind of been put on pause. So hopefully they're hopeful that when the weather warms up, they'll be able to continue. But that's what I've gleaned, that some people have adapted. And of course, there are the social dances that did use alternative spaces like outside parks and I know a lot of troupes that used to rehearse in the bottom of, in the basements of stores or in furniture stores or whatever. They'd have a cousin who had a space somewhere. So they've been able to continue doing that. But in terms of teaching, that can be difficult.
Yeah. Thank you. You named some really important things there, right? There's an equity. There can be an equity issue. Just saying we're going to move all our programming online doesn't necessarily solve the problem. There's a digital divide in this country, and there's different points of access to online programming and Wi-Fi and connectivity. So you named something really important there. Thank you for that. Michael, how have you adapted, and what have you noticed in your social dance community in terms of adapting to this pandemic moment?
This has been devastating. And I would say for me, at one point, it was sheer panic. Sheer panic. I was paralyzed. And not just paralyzed physically, but certainly I couldn't, for a while, couldn't seem to get beyond the fact that I was not meeting with my company 3 times a week, where we would exchange, talk, whatever. But in part, thanks to Dance NYC and so on, we were able to get a grant to work on our infrastructure. And so I was able to pay some of my dancers who that's all they did, a small honorarium so that we could work on our costumes, so that we could work on our filing system, that we could work on our banking system. And then we also had moments of blossoming where we just said, okay, we're going online. And so we've taught a few classes online. It's been difficult. We've had a rehearsal. We've had 2 rehearsals to do a performance, a socially distanced performance for the Brooklyn Arts Council in the middle of snow at the Boathouse in Prospect Park. And it was such a joy to see each other in real time, real space. And I think what it really did was that it didn't detract or take anything away from the value of interactive social dancing. But I think it, in a way, people realized this is important to me. And so all our talks have been, I can't wait to start moving again. I can't wait to see you. I can't wait for us to be in touch so that we could be all under the same roof. And for me, it also brought a certain level of realization that this is my 24/7. I can't do without it. This is like air. And so I think there's been a deeper appreciation or deepening of the appreciation from my community, not just my direct dance community, but also my greater community, about the value and the worth of cultural and artistic endeavor coming from the root, be it the folkloric, be it whatever. It is super duper important. And we cannot just flip it off. It's essential. We're the essential workers. We're part of that force. Without us, our communities die. And so I think that as the restrictions lift, what we will see is everybody just running to some kind of movement, cultural activity, folkloric, because we have not been able to mourn. And the funerary dances of Trinidad and Tobago are very important. Limbo that we all try to do on the cruise ship is a funerary dance. Another one is bongo. We have not been able to do that. We've not been able to embrace each other inside of the movement and scaffold our fainting, our despair. It's been taken. So I think what we will see is, inside of this desert, as restrictions lift, we're all just going to gravitate really quickly right into that core of who we are. And I think that because we are these essential workers, that we will benefit. Strangely enough, we will benefit from this, because we have to, I think the dancers or cultural workers just are the eternal optimists. We see it. We see the la vie en rose. That's what we see, you know.
Wonderful. Michael, thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for making it personal, and thank you for sharing with us just what was going on emotionally for you in the first part of this pandemic. You are not alone. I'm sure thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of your fellow artists and dancers had that same sense of panic, wondering, this isn't just a hobby for me, although for some people it is, and that's fine. This is life-giving for me. So it's really important to center that. And so thank you for naming that. Thank you also for naming that your dance community is your community. And when you can't see them and when you can't be around your people, that hurts. That's a loss. And lastly, I think what you also named is who's standing in the gap. And so big props to organizations like Dance NYC, who showed up with interim funding, with gap funding, and others who are advocating for this art form and for this community. So really big props to our digital hosts here at Dance NYC. Michael, your answer actually queued up my next question perfectly. And we're going to come back to Nicole to kick off this round. But it really set it up perfectly, which is, how have the social dances that you are expert in, how are the social dances that you are, expert in, have expertise, background in, how have they shown up in the history of your community, to the extent that you can articulate that? What relationship do these dances have to the history of your community? Have they shown up as resistance? Have they shown up as celebration? Have they shown up as affirmation? Michael mentioned mourning. There are also dances of mourning, or is there some other expression or application of how these social dances show up? So Nicole, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, I definitely don't think of myself as an expert in a particular social dance that I've worked with through my consulting business or as a folklorist, but as I think of myself more as a partner. But I will speak, I've worked over the years with a number of Arab American and Palestinians who dance debki, which is a participatory line dance or circle dance. And that really, I'll just speak to that because that touches on basically everything you mentioned, as so many social dances do. First of all, celebration. This is a dance, if you're at a celebration of, it's part and parcel. You can't, if you take it out of the wedding, there is no wedding. For example, I was speaking to Iyad Fakhreddin. He's the troop leader of Al Afra. It's a debka group in New Jersey, and they're Lebanese and Palestinian. They perform at weddings and celebrations in Jersey and all over the East Coast. In Jersey, they actually had to cut off the music at these venues, at these wedding venues, because people wouldn't stop dancing. So they banned music. And I was like, I was so surprised. I'm like, I just can't conceptualize an Arab American wedding without music, and without Palestinian American or Lebanese American wedding without music, and especially without dance. But that's how much is linked in. It's like, it's just part of that life happening. You have to dance together. And so it's definitely a celebration of life. And when I've interviewed a number of debik or debki dancers, it's about just that embodied sense of belonging to each other. And because you're holding hands as you're dancing and you're moving together. And that's just something, talking about Zoom classes. I mean, I participated in this kind of dance class lecture on debki. You can't replicate that when you're by yourself in your bedroom. You need to feel each other rocking to the beat and swaying. So that whole sense of unity is, every time there's a debka line that's performed, that's reinforced. And it's sustained throughout the movement. So it's a form of celebration, it's a form of cultural sustainability, it's a form of resistance in so many ways. We can talk about in obvious forms of resistance to the forces of oppression and all the forces that happen in migration and diaspora and immigration, And especially if you look at the Palestinian case of occupied territories and occupied land, it's performed as a dance of resistance in front of barriers and walls and bulldozers to represent Palestinian culture, and to say that resistance dance is a form of culture is resistance. Actually, presenting your culture is showing that you're continuing in the face of occupation and oppression. So that definitely takes place in Palestine and here as well. Was there another aspect of it? Yeah. So that's really, those are two examples that come to mind.
That's great. Thank you, Nicole. Jyoti, I'm going to pass it off to you. How have the dance, whether it's Bhangra or some of the other dances that you are familiar with, how have they shown up in the history of your communities?
Yeah, so Bhangra is traditionally it's a harvest dance, and really it was there were a bunch of different regional dances with different names. And in 1947, when India gained independence from the British and was partitioned into Pakistan and India, a lot of people were forced to flee. They were, divided along religious lines. For those people, for those of you not familiar with the history, Pakistan was created as a Muslim country. India was everybody else: Hindus, Sikhs, Christians, and so, although there's a huge Muslim population still in India. And so, after this experience of, having to leave homeland, many people found themselves in refugee camps in India, right? They had been in Pakistan, that was their home, and they had to leave, and they were now in India. And so you had people from different parts of the region. And one of the ways that they dealt with this trauma was to share their dances. So Bhangra is really like, even though it's rooted in these very like old dance forms, it's in its modern form is very much a post-colonial sort of expression of identity. And so it was, all these different regional dances came together. And in, I think it was 57, 58, was a big Republic Day parade in New Delhi. So that was the first time that they, according to scholars, like performed this dance as this is the Punjabi dance. This is an expression of Punjabi identity and Punjabi culture. So it became very much about, the trauma of colonization, and then an expression of who are we, pre and post-colonial experience, how do we identify ourselves? And dance becomes a very strong way to express a regional and a national identity. And in Guinea, very similar experience in the sense that, dance was a way that after independence from the French, their first president, Sékou Touré, he created these national ballets, these national percussion companies with regional dances from all over the country that were then staged and toured around the world. And it was like, this is who Guinea is. This is our pre-colonial identity. This is our post-colonial identity. So, very much a resistance to colonization. For Bhangra, it's gone from harvest to clubs and weddings. So you see it in clubs. You see it at weddings in a similar way that Nicole was articulating. Same kind of situation for Punjabis. Like you hear the music and everyone starts going like this, and it's an express. I mean, I think I hear it at non-Punjabi Indian weddings. It's like kind of a popular music, popular dance. It's also in college competitions in the United States. You see it a lot, it's a huge thing. And in Canada, maybe in England as well, just a very, like it's like a mix of traditional folk dance, cheerleading and hip hop, and like in a competitive sphere. I think it also, please stop me if I'm talking too long. Also, I'm almost done.
We are riveted. All of us are riveted to what you're saying, and this is important history. It's worth it. But please continue.
It's also, an expression of gender roles, and like it codified and is very much upholding this social order. So Bhangra is traditionally a man's dance, and women have this dance called Gidda. And so it's very much about this like gender binary. This is what women do, this is what men do. And in Gidda, women will dance in a circle and sing songs, and a lot of times it's like about their mother-in-law, about, just like getting to talk about these things and express things that they couldn't do in like the general public. So it becomes a disruption in that way, and but also a safe space for them to do that so that they're not disrupting the social order as a whole. And then also for caste roles, I mean, my family's Sikh. We're not supposed to have caste, but in so many Punjabi songs you hear Jat, which is like an expression, people say it means farmer, but it's really how caste has shown up in Sikhism, in Punjabi culture, even when, the founders of the Sikh religion said, we don't want caste, we're forming this religion in response to that. So I think, in the opposite way, it's also used to subvert that. Now you see women, so many women doing Bhangra, subverting those gender roles. People, there's this huge protest going on in India right now. People are using this harvest dance to bring attention to that. They're talking about these huge issues that Punjabi farmers are facing, and they're also using that to talk about how are, within that Punjabi farming community, how is caste being upheld? Like, are we standing up just for the people who own lots of land? Or are we standing up for everybody? And so, it just really has this great potential for transformation and resistance as well.
Jyoti, thank you. Thank you for that overview. It's an important overview. And even though it's localized in a particular part of the globe, thematically, that plays in dances across the world. That dance is for celebration, dance is for marking seasons, dance is for all of these things. And yet dance is living resistance and can be used as Nicole said, as you've just articulated, it's living and it's changing. And whether it's on gender roles or for making political statements, dance and embodied movement is still such an important expression. Michael, I'm going to pass that question off to you, and understanding that you have this wonderful wealth of experience in a number of dances. Maybe if you can pick, it's true. Maybe if you pick one, is there one particular dance that that you would say, and how does it relate, to the history of the culture that you embody?
Well, I think that, thank you for that, by the way. I feel honored, and, my ego is being fattened here. It feels good. It feels good. Feed me, feed me. I would not point to one particular dance, sure, but I would respond to a group or body of dances that are exemplified in Carnival. And I think that the Carnival tradition, the idea of a pre-Lenten celebration, Carne Valet, farewell to flesh, that shows up in this 21st century as a celebration of flesh, that of exposed flesh, that is, bikini and beads to some people. The whole idea of dance as resistance. And I want to point directly to like Juve celebrations in Brooklyn. The whole idea of this Juve, or the opening of the day, is really shrouded in its own shroud of the demi-monde as far as light and darkness. The whole idea of that arena of not bright light, not total darkness that we find ourselves in, and formerly enslaved Africans taking to the streets of Port of Spain are now taking to the streets of Brooklyn. celebrating the whole idea of freedom from the yoke of bondage of the white planter, the white colonizer, and being able to parody, satirize, speak their minds about the whole order. And so Jouvet really speaks to the upending of the order. So that which is at the top becomes that which is at the bottom. And therefore the enslaved are now performers, and we're on the streets we're mimicking, we're satirizing. But in doing that, we're also saying, we are empowering ourselves to be able to say to the powers, and I use that in inverted commas, that be, look at you. We have the power to speak this through our bodies, through our expression. So even though some of the characters that appear in the Jouvet tradition bear French names, they are really French names via an Africanized lens. And so when we look at the jab or the diable, as you would say in the Francophone countries, the devil mass or the devil masquerade, when you look at the examples from the Cameroon, you see the same thing, that do not have or are not coming from a European inflection, but it's coming from an African inflection, but somehow there is a merging. And who's to say how culture merges and emerges? You know, it's left to the folk, the people, these practitioners who are there. The Dame Lorraine with huge breasts and huge buttocks that are in one way satirizing the colonial masters and mistresses with their bustles and their décolletage, etc. But at the same time, putting a lens on Gelede and Egungun masquerade from southwestern Nigeria. So they're finding bridges to say, this is who we are, and this is who you are, pointing that finger in a way that is empowering. So that when this takes to the streets of Brooklyn in the 3:00 a.m. hour of the morning, that whole idea, this fleshly bacchanalia, for want of a better word, this fleshly expression of joy, but also of resistance, of freedom, of emancipation, is in a way so reminiscent of what all that resistance is. You cannot stop this deluge. It's unstoppable. And what has happened here in New York is that in Trinidad and Tobago and in Grenada and some of the other islands of that archipelago, they have moved into what I call canned music. So they have DJs and so on. In Brooklyn, no, everything's acoustic. You cannot have DJs. Everything has to be skin, hand on hand, percussion of whatever you have. If you're going to have a trumpet, it's got to be played. It cannot be synthesized. It's what it is. And so what we see here in Brooklyn is a resistance that is drawing from the history of what it came from to then exemplify to the people in Trinidad, like, we don't do what you do. We do this. So learn from us that we are taking what we know and we're making it maybe better or maybe even more traditional or whatever, so it's that. And it is dance, movement, characterization, music, lyrics, all embody resistance. It is resistance, resistance, resistance. We will not be ignored. We will not be washed over. You will not wash away the blood of our pain. Hello.
Hello. And mic drop. I cannot move on to the next question without just acknowledging just a couple of things you said there, which is number one, dance, not just the individual performative act, but as part of a larger celebration, in this instance, carnival that you lifted up, um, as both a mirror and a window, a mirror to one's experience, but a window into something else. And, and this idea of cultural affirmation. Salsa was always my father's music, and it wasn't until I started dancing it that it became my music. It became my music, and it became my embodied expression of my Puerto Rican heritage. And what I'm hearing is that Brooklyn is saying, no, 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 you all went DJ. We're keeping it grounded in the roots, and we are bringing the musicians here. We are doing this with musicians. We are doing this with real drums. We are doing this with real instruments. And as you name, there's a tension there, because there's a dialogue that's happening non-verbally maybe, but very much embodied in the culture of the dance and the larger celebration. This is super rich, and I got to keep it moving because there's a clock, and I'm trying to pay attention to it. So what I'd like to move into now is I want to talk about barriers and challenges that you may have experienced in expressing these social forms in the larger dance world, in the larger dance community. I have been in situations, whether it's an audition for a show or as a guest artist at a university, where all this rich stuff that we are talking about gets put in this place called ethnic dances for 3 credits. And yet the entire dance major is ballet and modern and contemporary and what have you. But if you want to get some of this ethnic stuff, we will give you world dances in 6 months. So I'm curious, that's a little bit of my bias showing through, and some of my opinions, which I will stop. I'm curious though to lift that up to the group. Sort of, have you experienced any barriers or challenges or points of tension? Jyoti, I'm gonna go to you first on this one. Have you experienced any points of tension between the social dances you inhabit and the larger dance community? Jyoti.
Yes. The answer to that question is yes. I think maybe I'll start where you, the point that you mentioned. I don't have a degree in dance, and there's a reason for that, because there was no degree program for me. I'm not a ballet dancer. I'm not a capital C contemporary dancer. And I started a world dance program at a school here, the Ruth Asawa San Francisco School of the Arts, which is a public high school, performing arts high school here that students have to audition into. And there was a dance department. And so, just the problematic nature of the program being called a world dance, because it is, in fact, dance. And so I think that distinction gets drawn so much. And this idea that technique is only in the domain of ballet and in contemporary dance, and that the dances that we do don't have technique, that they're not rigorous. And so I think that there's a lot of that bias. I mean, I think what we see in our overall structure of white supremacy in this country very much shows up in dance. It is not any different because it's an art form. We have a very white supremacist structure in our dance, in the way dance functions in this country. And I'll also say, with the word contemporary, our dances are contemporary. We're doing them today. We're doing them tomorrow, hopefully. So I think there's been, there's so much bias around, when you are looking at funding, where they're like, we want experimental, we want new, we want, something that's contemporary. It's like, well, what I'm doing is contemporary, and people don't You know, they think of traditional dances as static, you know, they're not dynamic. And then, you know, because I touched on funding, I mean, I think, you know, this is starting to change in the Bay Area, and people are paying more attention to, you know, what has been funded traditionally, what hasn't. In our city here, you know, the opera, the symphony, the ballet, they have the big buildings, they have the big budgets, and people are starting to look at that, but it's going to take a really long time for that to turn around and to become more equitable. But there is so much inequity in terms of, you know, our dance forms. And I think in large part, you know, we are many or most of us are practitioners of color. And that's no accident, you know, those things go hand in hand. So.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. We're approaching, we're getting to the tail end of our time together, and I want to make sure that I leave some space for each of you to speak into something that I think is really important. And so we may have time for one or two more questions, but I want to make sure I get this question in, and that is, you know, we started this conversation talking about social dance in the pandemic moment, right? Social dance in this moment, and we heard from each of you a lot of really interesting thoughts about adaptation, you know, about what has changed, what we've gained, what we've lost, and this, you know, the personal stresses and triumphs of this moment. One of the things I'd like to ask you to share with our audience is, you know, are there any adaptations that you've experienced this year in this pandemic moment that you actually would like to keep? You know, when we return to the other side of this pandemic, Michael talked earlier about there's going to be a mad rush to the dance floors because we're going to have all of this pent up energy from not being able to dance with other people in the ways that we're accustomed to. But I would imagine that we've learned some things. I would imagine that some things have worked really well. Some things have actually been innovative and have served us. So, so I'm gonna send this to Nicole first. I'm gonna send this your way first, Nicole. But I'd like you to think about what's worked for you this year. What aspects of social, traditional, folkloric dance in your experience this year do you see surviving and actually thriving on the other end of on the other side of this pandemic? Nicole?
Well, off the cuff, I guess something that's been on my mind is that when I was presenting social and vernacular dances, like in a public format, one of the main concerns is, well, how are you going to keep the important qualities of it, like it may be improvisational, maybe participatory, in the context of it. Perhaps it's a dance that women would perform in a living room, but now some of them are comfortable presenting it in a public situation. So is that going to be a library? How are you going to keep that intimate setting of a participatory, like living, you know, that safe space of the living room? So that's something that I thought about in this pandemic moment. And I think that's something that could connect dancers in their own particular social space using technology, like whether it's Zoom or Instagram Live or some sort of virtual format where people can connect their own social setting and maintain that, you know, maybe it's a small gathering. Other people can gather across the platform and not have it be so contrived where it's, for example, it's not being presented on a stage where all of a sudden you have to adapt the social dance as a presentation dance. So people can connect across that platform in that way. I was thinking in particular of this one dancer that I know, Esra Warda. She's an Algerian dancer in Brooklyn, and she's been doing online classes, and it's been going great for her. And I know one of the things that she always finds important in her teaching is to maintain the celebratory and social celebration and bring that across into teaching Algerian and Moroccan social dance. And I think it's almost easier sometimes when she's in her bedroom and other people are in their living rooms to connect that way, instead of going to an artificial space of a studio. So I'm hoping that some people can maintain that that like liveliness that comes from home and being in a safe space.
Thank you for that, Nicole. I mean, we're talking about streets and living rooms, and I think that there is something powerful about reclaiming the living space, which we may be a little bit tired of right now, maybe because we've got cabin fever for a year, and so we're dying to get out of our homes. But there is something powerful about reclaiming the living space as a dance center, and not just the center for streaming movies, which I admit to just binge watching all kinds of movies this and TV shows this year. Michael, anything on the other side of this that you think, any COVID adaptations that on the other side of this you think can or should or could remain?
Preamble, I am a technophobe.
Ah.
So I think this has cured me. I realized that there are other ways to reach people. There are other methodologies to reach people. I feel that when we practice using the technology, we see its faults, its powers. And I think that the ability for it to be inclusive. So I wanted to go to this dance conference in Australia. And I was looking forward to traveling 22 hours, like, oh, Lord, I'm looking forward to that. No, but I was being in Australia, and now I can, with apparently no loss in quality, except, of course, the time difference, that I have to be up maybe at 2 o'clock in the morning to get the best of things. So I think that we need to hold on to the fact that technology can be a bridge and not a deterrent. That technology doesn't necessarily diminish the feeling or the feeling of transformation that we can have inside of a theater or inside of a dance hall or on the streets of Brooklyn, that we could actually enjoy seeing, the interactions of others, as we connect inside of this created space, inside of the cyberspace. And I think that we need to hold on to that. It has also shown me, and I've been resistant to this in my own college teaching, because I'm an adjunct at Lehman College in the dance department. And for years, they were saying hybrid course. And I was like, hell no. I didn't care. I was going to go into that classroom because I felt that it was necessary. And now I know that some courses can transfer to the platform successfully. It frees up some time to some students because we're a commuter college. So some people can actually be at work. I have one student who is a Navy captain, and she was in her Navy uniform on that ship, like being in my dance history course. And she was happy, she got her degree. There are all these possibilities. So I think that what comes out of this is the ability for technology to enlarge in the scope and the quality of what we present and how we present it. I am also doing some traditional storytelling using video and all of that, and creating costumes. And I hearken back to Merce Cunningham when he talked about using the computer and doing the electrodes and on the body. And everybody thought, oh, he's crazy, da 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 da. Now we have it like flowering in this way, not in the way that maybe Cunningham thought about it, but certainly we have this, and it's like, wow, okay, so he was kind of onto something in a way. And so, yeah, I think that we can hold on to the technology and really milk it for what is good, so that we can have situations like this where Jyoti is in San Francisco and we're here and we can do whatever it is we do.
Michael is doing Zooms now, hosting Zoom webinars. He's got MailChimp and Constant Contact, like doing all kinds of like virtual conferences. And a year ago would have told the director of a dance department, I will only teach if I am in a studio. So
Absolutely.
we're all growing through this moment, and amen for that. So I got from our production team that we've only got a few minutes left, and so what I'd like to do in these last few minutes is take a moment to think about. Again, I'm going to get a little bit personal right now, and take a moment to think about kind of once you get the green light. And for everybody, the green light might be different. We are hoping that our federal government and our state agencies vaccinate as soon as possible, and that we can get to social situations as safely as possible and as soon as possible. But so the green light might be different based on where you live. But what's the one thing you are looking forward to doing on the other side of this? Like when you get the green light in your community and it's go, what are you I am looking forward to an outdoor festival with like barbecue at a food truck by like a waterfront situation where there's dance and there's live music, and I can get like a shish kebab or I can get a hot dog and I can dance in my t-shirt and my jeans and just be outside having a good time. That's what I'm looking forward to. What are you looking forward to, Jyoti?
I want to come to that festival, first of all. I want to hug. I want to hug. I want to touch, my dance arm in my body. And I want to have a raging house party. And I want, be able to have people inside. A raging house party where every inch of the house is filled with people and we're dancing and and go and see shows and be in shows. I want all of it.
Awesome. Nicole, what are you looking forward to on the other side of this?
Well, I want to hit up Orchard Beach in Coney Island because I know that's a traditional spot for outdoor salsa gatherings, and that's been going on. But yeah, I just want to go to a club and just get sweaty with a bunch of people. But I'll be doing that and taking a dance class, of course. I do miss going to the studio because I have kids and I gotta get away from them.
And you've got to get away from the kids sometimes because we love our kids, but they can drive us crazy. Michael, you've got the last word on this. What are you looking forward to on the other side?
Going to Carnival in Trinidad and Tobago, followed by Brooklyn Juve. It's got to be. So I've got 6 months in between, February to September, so I can recharge in time for Brooklyn Juve. Got to do it.
Awesome. I think we all want to book that flight with you and do that in Trinidad and Tobago. This brings us to the end of our time, friends. This has been a rich discussion. I wish we had another 15 or 20 minutes, but there's some other people who apparently have some things to say in another panel discussion. We should let them. And so I want to thank each of our guests, Nicole Makatsis, Michael Manswell, and Jyoti Singh. Again, you can find their information in the bios in the program. Please follow them. Please follow what they're doing. They're all up to some amazing things in their communities. Again, big ups to Dance NYC for bringing this group together and for making this symposium happen digitally. Thank you to everyone who's involved and the people you can't see behind the scenes who are making this thing happen. Thank you so much. And Jessica, we're going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Rodney. Thank you, Rodney. And thank you to our wonderful group of speakers, Jyoti, Nicole, Michael, for today's insightful conversation. To our attendees, thank you for being avid contributors and offering your insight in all the ways. A final thank you to Amy Hollingsworth-Papson from Viscardi Center and Brandon Kazin-Maddox and Michael Barrios from LC Interpreting Services for their invaluable support. We are heading over to the session follow-up chat in the community section to take a few questions and wrap up the conversation. So what's next? You can continue to experience the symposium. You can visit our sponsors in the exhibitor hall. You can create virtual meetups and online conversations at our community board. You can message other attendees and engage with the symposium thematic guides in the digital program book. Today's Justice thematic guide was curated by Jonathan Gonzalez. We will also continue the Justice Track conversations at 1 o'clock with 101 workshop series, Racial Justice, Know Your Rights, and Accessibility with Najul X. Porter, Luba Cortez, Dustin Gibson, and we'll have Negotiations of Power in Commercial Cultural Practice with Nelita Tirado, Cesar Valentino, Jaquel Knight, Anahid Sofian, and the moderator, Michelle Bird McPhee. We're headed off to lunch, so please nourish your bodies and take care of yourself, and have a great one, everyone.
Thank you for joining today's sessions. A special thanks to our funders, the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, the Howard Gilman Foundation, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, the New York State Council on the Arts, and the National Endowment for the Arts. A special thanks to our lead sponsor, Con Edison, and our lead dance advocate, Jody Gottfried Arnhold. Subsidies for the education and dance worker ticket tiers are made possible by the Arnhold Foundation. A special thanks to our host and partner level sponsors, Nell Shelby Productions, Gibney, In the Lights, and New York Live Arts. And last, but certainly not least, a special thanks to our Justice, Equity, and Inclusion partners, Art Beyond Sight, Art Space Sanctuary, Asian American Arts Alliance, Center for Traditional Music and Dance, Indo-American Arts Council, the International Association of Blacks in Dance, Lotus Music and Dance, Museum Arts and Culture Access Consortium, National Association of Latino Arts and Culture, New York Foundation for the Arts, and Women of Color in the Arts. Up next, at 12 o'clock, you can take your lunch. At 1 o'clock, we'll begin our afternoon sessions. At 2:30, we'll take a short break, and at 2:45, we'll meet at the daily debrief. At 3:45, you can move your bodies in our daily dance break. At 4:15, you can visit our virtual expo showcase. And at 5:30, we'll have our keynote conversation. Stay connected with us by posting your takeaways on social media using the hashtags DanceSimp, DanceNYC 2021, and DanceSimp 2021. Explore the Whova features by building your agenda of sessions, connecting with other attendees, joining community conversations, and visiting the exhibitor hall. And don't forget to check out our 2021 Symposium Digital Program Book with curated thematic guides. How are we doing? Did you like a session? Use the like feature on your favorite session. Got feedback for us? Take the post-event survey after March 20th and tell us how we did. Need help? Email us at customerservice@dance.nyc. A special thanks to our video asset and streaming partners, Renegade Performance Group, Full Out Creative, and Nell Shelby Productions. Thanks for joining. Keep in touch at dance.nyc. Thank you for joining today's sessions.